I was scared when I lost my mother, my father, my brother, my sister. I loved them all my heart and soul, you know, and it was time for them to go. I saw you in my dream. We were walking hand in hand on a white sandy beach of Hawaii. We were playing in the sun. We were having so much fun on a white sandy beach of Hawaii.
According to the Permanent Court of Arbitration, which is the oldest world court since 1899, it said that in the 19th century, the Hawaiian Kingdom existed as an independent state, recognized as such by the United States, Great Britain, and various other states. And that sovereignty was exercised by the Hawaiian Kingdom government. Well, that government, we know, was illegally overthrown in 1893, admitted it was illegal, the United States President, Cleveland. But by overthrowing a government, that did not mean the country ceased to exist. So how did the Hawaiian Islands become a part of the United States? That's a fundamental question. Well, annexation. This is how annexation takes place between countries, called international law. Cession of state territory is the transfer of sovereignty over state territory by the owner state to another state. And the only form in which a cession can be effected is an agreement embodied in a treaty between the ceding and the acquiring state. The majority of the United States was acquired through ceded lands from foreign countries. The first land to be transferred to the United States from a foreign country happened in 1803, and that's called the Louisiana Purchase. That was followed up in 1819, a cession from Spain, which is the area that we know today as Florida. Pacific Northwest from the British in 1846. Alaska, 1867, from Russia. These were voluntary cessions, negotiated. But you also have an example, a few examples, but one here, a Treaty of Conquest, Treaty of Peace, Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, 1848, that ended the Mexican-American War. So what is the authority of Hawaii's annexation? Obviously, we would have to look for a treaty, especially when we keep saying ceded lands today, because ceded lands implies there's been a transaction. Something was ceded. Actually, it goes back to July 7, 1898, a joint resolution to provide for annexing the Hawaiian Islands to the United States. A joint resolution is not a treaty. A joint resolution is municipal law of the United States Congress. Now, what were the congressmen saying at that time regarding this prospect of annexing Hawaii without a treaty? Well, of many senators and representatives on the record, Senator William Allen from Nebraska said it best. He said the Constitution and the statutes are territorial in their operation. That is, they can have no binding force or operation beyond the territorial limits of the government in which they are promulgated. In other words, the Constitution and statutes cannot reach across the territorial boundary of the United States into the territorial domain of another government and affect that government or persons or property therein. The joint resolution of annexation is ipso facto null and void. So he's not arguing you can't annex. He says this never happened because it's an American law. It's not a treaty. 2 years later, the United States Congress passed another law called the Organic Act, April 30th, 1900, renaming the Hawaiian Kingdom government, its infrastructure, to the territory of Hawaii. And in 1959, the United States passed another law, Public Law 86-3, called the Statehood Act. Again, it's a municipal law. And then in 1993, the United States Congress passed a joint resolution apologizing for the illegal overthrow. But again, it's just an American law, limited to US territory. So what does the United States Supreme Court say about US laws? It says neither the Constitution nor the laws passed in pursuance of it, referring to the federal Constitution and the federal statutes, have any force in foreign countries. They don't have any force in a foreign country because of that country's independence. On December 18, 1893, the United States President admitted to the United States Congress in a manifesto, by an act of war, the government of a friendly and confiding people has been overthrown. Act of war, that is a trigger word for state of war, which initiates the law of occupation. takes it out of the state of peace. Overthrowing the government does not equate to an overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom as an independent state. So the focus should have been not getting a government, but whether or not the Hawaiian Kingdom still exists. That's the focus that nobody was looking at. Well, here's the answer why we don't know, and it's okay, because I'm not here to blame anybody. We're all victims of circumstance. The insurgents, they're all dead. The children are not insurgents, right? If my dad committed a crime, don't blame me. Hold my dad accountable, right? So this is not about blaming. This is about understanding.